Here we go, example number 2, using sine or cosine to determine the measure of an angle. So see how those two questions were different? Determine the sine and cosine, that just wants the ratio. Determine, using sine and cosine, the measure of an angle. That's that next step. That's these steps here that I did in blue in example 1. Okay. Determine the measure of angle K and angle M to the nearest degree. So let's start with angle K. If we are looking at angle K, we need to label our triangle because, why? Because I know I'm using trigonometry, so I know I need to use sine, cosine, or tangent. I need to have my triangle labeled with opposite, hypotenuse, and adjacent. Remember that hypotenuse is always opposite to the right angle. It's the longest side of the triangle. There's my hypotenuse. And then the opposite and adjacent get labeled depending on depending on what you're given in the triangle. So this would be my opposite side, 3 is my opposite side, and then this blank one is our adjacent side. Okay. So what's the measure of angle K? So at this point, because now I know about sine, cosine, and tangent, all three ratios, I have to figure out which one to use. And I do that by looking at my triangle and I think about what I'm given. Well, I know I'm looking for angle K. I know I'm looking for angle K because it said find angle K. What do I have? I have my hypotenuse and I have my opposite side. So I think to myself, well, what trig function relates opposite and hypotenuse? I go to my acronym. What trig function uses or relates opposite and hypotenuse? And that would be sine. Okay. So sine is my formula. So I go sine of some angle is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. Well, what am I given? I know that it is sine of angle K. That's an ugly K. I was drawing an angle. Thought I'd try and make it into K. Sine of angle K is equal to my opposite side, in this case, which was 3, over my hypotenuse, which was 8. I can calculate my funky decimal number, 3 divided by 8. I should know that off the top of my head. I want to say 3 divided by 8, 0.375, just to be sure. Now, think to yourself, if I'm looking for an angle, I have to use the inverse function. If I have this ugly, funky decimal number, then probably my next step is using the inverse function. I know I'm looking for angle K. I have to use the inverse function of sine of that number. So I plunk that into my handy-candy calculator. Inverse function of sine gives me 22.02431283704 3704.04216. There's another drawback of using those phone calculators because you get so many decimal points, so many decimal numbers. Yes, you still have to carry a number of them in your question, but I definitely don't need this many. And of course, angle measurements, the only angle, unless we're actually specified in the question, that we can round to the nearest whole number, our angle measurement is 22 degrees. Now, once you're proficient with this idea of using sine, cosine, and tangent, if I needed to find angle M right now, I could simply say, well, I know that in every triangle there's 180 degrees. If I take away the 90-degree angle that's already there, and I take away the 22-degree angle that I just calculated, I should be able to say that angle M is equal to 68 degrees. Now, because we are learning and practicing, we're going to go back and we're going to do this using the proper calculations. So now if I'm looking for angle M, I need to change my labels. So I'm going to quickly erase my highlights just so that they're out of the way. There's my highlights out of the way. And I'm going to change my color. I'm going to change to purple. So if I'm looking for angle M, my labels of my triangle change now. My hypotenuse still stays the same because it is always opposite to the right angle. But this side becomes my opposite side. And this side, 3, becomes my adjacent side. So now I have to do that rethinking all over again. If I'm looking for angle M, and I have my hypotenuse, and I have my adjacent side, okay, what trig function relates adjacent and hypotenuse? Well, in this case now, It's cosine. So my formula, cosine of an angle is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. Cosine of angle M is equal to my adjacent side, which was 3, over my hypotenuse, which was 8, which I think 3 divided by 8 hasn't changed in the last minute. So, whoops, not cosine of M. So that's 0.375. Remember, and thinking to yourself, well, if I have this funky decimal number, it's probably not a proper answer for an angle measurement, so I need to do another step. If I'm looking for an angle, I need to do another step. So angle M is equal to the inverse function of cosine minus 1, of 0.375. I put that into my handy dandy calculator. 0.375 inverse cosine, 67.975687, or 68 degrees. Using cosine and sine to calculate for a missing angle.